Hi, and welcome to Matt's Workshop. This is the third part of a series about my small workshop workbench build, so if you haven't already, please go watch the previous parts. Now I start to work on the installation of the face vise, but I won't be showing the installation of the vise itself, just the preparation of the workbench frame to receive it. The first step you see here is I'm drilling the 3 large holes to accommodate the shafts and the lead screw of the vise. And now I move on to the mounting plate, and this plate is going to be attached underneath the tabletop. It will have 5 chamfer screw holes to fix it underneath the workbench, and 4 more holes to fix the vise to it. And I'm going to install a sacrificial material kind of faceplate for the vise so that I can replace it whenever it's worn off. This material is going to be a 1/4 inch thick. For now I'll probably just use MDF, but later I'd like to use some hardwood. But to be able to install it, I need to dig some material out of the workbench face, and this is what you see me do here. And I'll be showing the installation of the vise itself in another video. An aspect of the build that I did not document very much is the winch system that I'll be using to raise and lower the sawbox. I had to improvise that solution when I realized that my initial idea of raising and lowering the sawbox with handles would not work. And I did not film everything, but I do have some clips here of when I installed the cable pulley on the frame, and you also have a glimpse of the face vise installation from underneath the workbench here. In order to fix the sawbox onto the frame, I need to have some side panels on which I can install the drawer slides, and this is what we'll be seeing here. Much like for the sawbox itself, the first thing I do on the table saw is to cut some grooves to help me install the drawer slides later. And now I mark, punch, and pre-drill a series of holes. The holes closest to the center of the panel are to install some French cleats that I'll be using to suspend the different toolboxes that I'll be installing from the outside of those panels. And the holes close to the edges of the panel are to assemble it to the workbench frame. Here I'm drilling a large hole to feed the power cord that will reach the table saw inside the sawbox. And then I start to work on the slots that will receive the locking pin of the sawbox locking mechanism. First I mark the positions of the slot using a wood drill bit, and then using these marks as a reference I position a straight edge, and I use the router to cut the slots across the panel. And here on one of the panels I'm using a fly cutter to cut a large hole to accommodate the vents holes that go through it. This is a view of both panels complete, and I can now go ahead and install them inside of the frame. All the mounting holes have been pre-drilled, so it's just a matter of installing the screws. And with these panels in place, I can now screw in the sawbox, and unfortunately this is the only clip I have of it here, but you'll see much of it later. And finally, from the external side of both panels, I installed the French cleat I mentioned earlier that I'll be using to suspend the different boxes. And one of these toolboxes is going to be the router box that I'll be showing next. This box is meant to contain the router lift as well as to contribute to the dust collection system. Accessible from the front will be 2 drawers, one of which is actually the cover that I can remove to have access to the router lift. So I'll be showing the main frame of this box first. It will be made of all the panels you see here that have been previously cut to size. And the first step is to make some cutouts on the external side panels. And for that I'm using the scroll saw. Next, I need to drill a large hole in one of the panels to receive the power cord, and for that I'm using a hole saw. And then I'm drilling the 2 screw holes that will be used to fix the box itself on the workbench panel. And now I need to cut another large hole for the vent hose, so I start with the hole saw and I finish on the scroll saw. And now with all those panels ready, I can just fix them together with glue and nails. And now I can start to build the router box drawers, and again all the panels have been pre-cut. I just have a few cutouts to do which will be acting as handles, and for that I just start the cutouts with fastener bits and then I finish them on the scroll saw again. And once more, with all the panels complete, it's just a matter of using some glue and the nail gun to assemble the drawers. And here they are in their place for the first time. Now I need to make the top part of the French cleat that holds the router box on the panel, as well as a small bumper that I'll be installing at the bottom. So I need to cut these parts on the table saw, and then I need to pre-drill their mounting holes. And now I can fix those parts in place, and I'm not using any glue for this, I'm just using the wood screws. Off camera, I installed some insulating strips on top of the router box to help with dust collection, but then I realized that I had a small interference with the bolt that holds the cable pulley in place, so I need to make a cutout, and that's what you see here. I finally installed the French cleat and I'm done with this part. Now I'll be working on the dust collection selector box. Once again, this is a pretty simple box frame and I'll be starting with the top part. I'll be using 3 blast gates and I need to pre-drill all the mounting holes for each of them, as well as opening the center with a hole saw. I also drill 1 hole at each end, which will help to secure the selector box on the workbench frame. On the front panel, I need to make 3 cutouts to give access to the blast gates doors. I start by cutting the corners with fastener bits and I finish the cuts on the scroll saw. On both end plates I'll be making cutouts the exact same way. I'm also drilling 2 half-inch holes on either sides of those cutouts. I will be feeding an aluminum tube through these holes, you will see that later. And with all the components ready, it's now time to assemble them together and turn them into a box. And now I can move on to install the blast gates with all the couplings and holes and collets that I need to fix everything together. I start by pre-drilling the mounting holes on each blast gate, and then I fix them to the frame with wood screws. And then I install the Y couplings with the holes that link them together. And all these components will be secured in place with tie wraps attached to the aluminum tubing that I'm feeding through the box here. And this completes the build of the dust collection vent selector system. And now I'll be making the Deadman, which is made of 4 thicknesses of plywood, 3 of which are glued together and the other one is screwed on afterward. So I have long strips of plywood cut to width, and now I need to use a miter saw to cut them to length. And I have to cut 2 pairs of panels of 2 different lengths. And then I can move on to assembly, where I need to first glue 3 of the panels together. So I start by applying the glue and positioning all the panels together and making sure that they're positioned at the proper distance and that everything is square. And then I use a nail gun to just fix everything in place. And after that I just use clamps to hold everything together while it dries. While the glue sets, I can work on the back panel to drill the screw holes that I need to fix it on the part I just glued together. And these holes needs a chamfer because I'm gonna use flathead screws. And then I use a transfer punch to locate the holes of the part I just drilled onto the part that were glued together. And I just go back on the press drill to pre-drill these holes to help with receiving the wood screws. And now I assemble every component together in preparation to drill the dog holes, which will be drilled almost all the way through. And here you see me marking the positions of all these dog holes in preparation to drill them. Then I center punch every hole and I go on the press drill again with a faster bit to drill them all. And in this case it did take quite a while because there was a lot of material to remove. And then I finalize these holes by making a quick chamfer on each of them. This is probably the only time you'll see me do this, but here I am applying the oil finish that I apply all across the workbench to help protect it. And this is the Deadman completed. And now I start to work on the control box frame, which sits on the left of the workbench. And very similarly, I will also have the right box, which is almost the same, but it sits at the right of the workbench. Both of these are built the same way, but the control box will have a few more features to accommodate the electrical wiring. Once again, everything is glued and nailed together, and once these are complete, you will see me start to work on installing the wiring in the control box. Here I am finishing the installation of a cable cover in the control box, and you can now see both boxes side by side. Now that these boxes are completed, it's time to see if they fit well on the box frame itself. First, I secure some mounting plates on the workbench itself, and these will be used to actually screw the boxes on the workbench frame. Then I can drill the 4 mounting holes on each box and install them in place. Now that the control box fits in place, it's time to bring electrical power to it. And because of the configuration of my workshop, the power needs to come in from the right of the workbench. So I have to install a PVC pipe to be able to feed the power line through the workbench and bring it to the control box. And now I can install a connector at the end of the power line, and I can finally fix it in place. And the next step is to wire everything in the control box. I start with a standard electrical enclosure, but I need to modify it to bring the power in, so I need to drill 2 holes at the top to get the power out to the router box and the saw box, and at the bottom I need 1 hole to get the power in. And I also need to install 2 safety switches on the control box cover, so you'll see me cut some rectangular openings for this. I can now install those safety switches in the cover and start to work on the power lines. I have built a small terminal block here where I can get the power input and split it in 2 power outputs that will go to the safety switches and then the router and the saw box. And then I can fix this enclosure on the wood frame and close the cover. Then I secure the cable protector back in place, and I can once again install the control box on the workbench frame. This is it for this video, but there will be more to come in this Workbench build series. So stay tuned for next, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And thanks for watching!